Have you ever tried to juggle multiple priorities at once? You start the day with a massive to-do list, trying to make progress on everything at once, jumping between work, personal projects, family, emails, deadlines. And somehow, by the end of the day, you've been busy all day, but you feel like you've got nothing done. Or maybe you have tried prioritizing, but it's impossible because everything feels important. And so instead, you bounce between tasks, constantly switching and always feeling behind. If so, you're not alone. A few years ago, I've been at the exact same spot, trying to do it all without burning out. But the harder I worked, the more I felt like I was just spinning the wheels. And then I realized something that completely changed everything. The way we typically think about prioritization is completely wrong. Once I understood that, everything clicked, and today I'm able to run my business, study philosophy on the side, lead a Scouts organization and play in an orchestra, all while staying fit, getting enough sleep and enjoying life with my family and friends. And the key? Understanding how prioritization actually works. Therefore, in this video I'll share 2 powerful principles that will completely change how you prioritize, so you can finally stop feeling overwhelmed and start making actual progress. Ready? Then let's dive in. First, let's quickly talk about why prioritization matters. Since you clicked this video, chances are you're trying to become more productive. But when it comes to that, many people get this wrong. They think being productive is all about doing more and more, while in reality, it's about choosing the right things and focusing only on those. There's an old German saying that loosely translates to "you can't dance at 2 weddings at the same time," which means you can't be in multiple places at once. Or more generally speaking, you can't do multiple things at once. And yet, that's exactly what most of us try to do every single day. We take on too many commitments, assuming we can balance everything. Think about the last time you tried to work on an important task. But every few minutes you checked your emails, you answered some Slack messages, or you got interrupted by a meeting. By the end of the day, you spent hours working, but never really made progress on the things that actually mattered. The truth is, when everything is important, nothing is. We say yes to too many things, scattering our attention, and end up making little meaningful progress in any one area. Instead of achieving more, we end up in a cycle of busyness with little to show for it. That's why, before we continue, I want to take a moment to reflect. How many times have you felt like there's just not enough time in a day? If you're anything like my past self, then you would check that question every single day. And now, let's explore the 2 principles that changed the way I think about it now. Every time you say yes to something, you are inevitably saying no to something else. Let me give you an example. Imagine you get an invite to an extra work meeting that wasn't on your calendar before. At first, it might seem like a small commitment, but by saying yes to that, you might be saying no to finishing that deep work project on time, or even saying no to the workout you've planned after work. The problem is we default to yes because it feels productive, but overcommitting leads to frustration, exhaustion, and eventually burnout. If you're anything like me, then the following might sound familiar. So, I've always been a curious person, fascinated by so many things, and because of that, I used to say yes to almost every opportunity that came my way. New projects, side gigs, hobbies, you name it. And it's not that I immediately regretted it. Whether it's starting a new project, planning a new hangout with my friends, or just booking tickets for yet another concert. All of those fueled my excitement at first, and I couldn't wait to get going. The problem is that the initial excitement vanishes quickly, and I either regretted saying yes in the first place, or I abandoned the project entirely. The truth is, my attention was constantly divided, and instead of excelling at a few things, I stretched myself too thin, unable to make real progress in any one area. Over time, I realized that saying yes to everything wasn't only overwhelming, it was actually preventing me from focusing on what truly mattered. That's when I realized that every yes carries a hidden cost. A hidden no, if you will. The question is, what are you saying no to, and are those the right things? Think of your time as a path with multiple forks in the road. Every decision to move forward on one path also means leaving another one behind. Given that our time is limited, we want to make sure that we walk on the right path as much as possible. Think of it this way. If there's at least one 10 out of 10 path at any given moment, would you risk it, knowing that you might miss it from time to time? Or would you rather choose the safe path, knowing that it's always only a 7 out of 10? The point is, choosing the right path is crucial. And we do so by making intentional decisions. Before agreeing to something, ask yourself, What am I saying no to by saying yes to this? Knowing what the cost is also makes it easier to say no. To quote one of my favorite authors, Derek Sivers, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. I actually shared my top 3 takeaways from his book, Hell Yeah or No, in a recent issue of my newsletter, and the response was incredible. If you found this insight helpful, then you will love my monthly newsletter, where I share practical strategies on self-management, productivity, and personal growth. It's free, and you can subscribe using the link in the description below. Now, knowing that you can always only walk one path at a time also holds another uncomfortable truth, which is the principle number 2, priority is binary. I'm sure you've all heard phrases like, what are your top 3 priorities right now? Or, everything is top priority. But the truth is, if everything is priority, then nothing is. We've complicated something that should be simple. We turn priority into a ranking system that it's never meant to be. Think about how companies label everything as high priority tasks. Your boss might say, we have 5 P0 tasks this week that we have to get done. But if everything is critical, how do you even know what to actually focus on? You don't, right? You just end up overwhelmed. The thing is, throughout most of history, priority was actually singular. There was no plural form. It simply meant the one most important thing. It wasn't until recent decades that we've twisted the concept of priority into something it was never meant to be, a rating system. But priority isn't a rating, it's a decision. Imagine trying to write an important email while also having a serious conversation with a friend. At first, you might think you can do it both, but as soon as you focus on one thing, you will lose track of the other. You can't give 100% effort to both at the same time. One always suffers. And it's exactly the same with priorities. No matter how hard you try, you can always only focus on one thing at a time. You either commit to something or you don't. There's no such thing as low or medium priority when it comes to execution. There's only what you're working on right now and what you're not. Of course, that's not to say that those scales are entirely useless. I mean, there's a reason why tools like the Eisenhower matrix are so popular. It's that they help us make those tough decisions by rating things according to their urgency, importance, or whatever metric you want to use. They help us unwield the cost of saying yes to something, but that's about it. We still have to make a decision in the end. The biggest mistake we make is treating priority like an attribute rather than a decision. Think of it like walking down 2 roads at once. It's impossible. You always have to choose one path. Alright, so now that we understand those principles, let's take a look how we can put them into action with real-world examples. To do so, I'll share with you my top 4 strategies. Number 1, first things first. The word priority comes from Latin prior, meaning first. So let's return to its original meaning by putting first things first. This is what I do every single day, and it only takes 3 simple steps to do. First, if you haven't already, create a list of everything you need to and want to do. Then, sort the list by importance, urgency, or whatever rating you want to use. This is where the scales come in handy again. Finally, take the first item and ignore everything else. Make it your priority. By doing so, you reduce cognitive load and make it easier to focus deeply. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can't do anything else until you've finished that task. But it means that if you could only do one task, it should be that one. For example, in the morning, instead of checking my emails first, I always start my day by working on the one thing that will have the biggest impact. Everything else, like meetings, calls, admin work, chores, whatever, comes after that. If you do this for a while, you will also notice that certain tasks keep getting pushed down further in the list. If that's the case, it might be a sign that those tasks are not actually important enough to get done in the first place. Because the bigger your list grows, the harder it is to maintain clarity. So be intentional and let go of things that don't truly matter. Number 2, weekly and monthly focus. In addition to tackling first things first, you could also set a weekly or monthly focus. This not only helps you whenever you have to make a decision, but it also helps you to see the bigger picture and whatever goals you're working towards. Instead of tackling everything at once, narrow down on only 1 or 2 things. For example, instead of trying to improve your fitness, your diet, and your sleep all at once, you could decide that this month your focus is fitness. And only once that habit is strong, you shift your focus and work on the next one. Because we often overestimate what we can do in a single day, but we underestimate what we can do in a week or even in a month. Number 3, the now versus later trick. I'm sure you've all said yes to something and later regretted it afterwards. For some reason, we tend to overcommit on things that feel far away, forgetting that later eventually becomes now. What might look like an empty calendar in 3 months will quickly fill up the closer we get to it. Ever agreed to an event months in advance thinking, wow, that sounds amazing, of course I'm in, but then when the day actually arrives, you wish you hadn't committed? Well, a quick way to prevent this is what I call the now versus later trick. Whenever you have to make a decision, ask yourself, would I still say yes if it were happening today? This simple trick helps you to filter out low priority commitments that feel easy to say yes to in the moment, but turn into future stress. And if you're not 100% sure yet, the next tip might be helpful. Number 4, decide later. Sometimes we say yes to something just because we feel pressured to make a decision on the spot or due to fear of missing out. But we don't always have to make a decision right away. Sometimes it's a good idea to pause and give it proper thought. Instead of saying yes right away, you might say something like, oh, thank you, but I need to check my schedule. Can I get back to you? Or, I want to give this proper thought. Let me follow up the other day. Give yourself time to assess whether it actually aligns with your goals and only then make a decision. That said, even if you decide to say no, please make sure to actually follow up. There's nothing more frustrating than waiting for someone just to learn that they've already made different plans and just forgot to communicate it. By implementing just one of the strategies shared in this video, I'm sure you'll already be able to achieve much more of what actually matters to you. If you want even more practical strategies on how to master your time and focus, I've put together a free ebook called Time Management for Busy People. It's a short, no-fluff guide packed with actionable insights, and you can grab it for free using the link in the description below. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What light bulbs went up for you when watching this video? And which of these strategies resonated with you the most? Please leave it in the comments below. And if you want to get even more tips on productivity, make sure to watch my previous video where I talk about 3 productivity myths that keep you stuck. Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.